Newly released documents reveal what led up to the arrest and conviction of a church leader in Ellis County, just sentenced for sexually assaulting case. Prosecutors say he got a 13-year-old girl pregnant.
It was a typical Tuesday evening at Baylor Scott and White Waxahachie Hospital when the labor and delivery staff encountered something that would haunt them forever. A 14-year-old girl had arrived in active labor, accompanied by a man who claimed to be her guardian. The medical team initially focused on the emergency at hand, but as hours passed, red flags began multiplying. The man, later identified as 53-year-old Marvin Scales, wasn't behaving like a concerned family member or guardian. He was controlling every aspect of the delivery process, making medical decisions, and displaying an unsettling level of involvement that made seasoned nurses exchange worried glances. His behavior was possessive, almost territorial, as if he owned the situation entirely. When staff members tried to speak privately with the young mother, Scales would interrupt or position himself where he could monitor every conversation. The girl seemed terrified, barely speaking above a whisper, and would glance nervously at Scales before answering any questions. Something was terribly wrong, and the hospital staff knew they had to act. Hospital staff immediately contacted Child Protective Services and local law enforcement, demanding a DNA test to determine the biological father of the newborn. Scales initially resisted, claiming he was simply a family friend helping during a crisis. But when authorities insisted, he had no choice but to comply. 3 weeks later, the results arrived and shattered every assumption. Marvin Scales wasn't just present at the birth. He was the biological father of the child. A 53-year-old man had impregnated a 14-year-old girl under his care. The community that had trusted him with their children's spiritual guidance was about to discover the horrifying truth about their beloved youth pastor. But this was just the tip of the iceberg. How many other children had suffered in silence? How many other trusted religious leaders were hiding similar secrets? If this story is already making your blood boil, hit that like button and buckle up, because what comes next will absolutely shock you. While investigators in Texas were uncovering Scales' crimes, another horrifying case was simultaneously unfolding in Houston. Pastor Robert L. Carter, a respected bishop in his community, was facing his own reckoning. Like Scales, Carter had also impregnated a young girl, but his victim was even younger when the abuse began. The parallels were disturbing. Both men were religious authority figures, both had violated the trust of families who looked up to them, and both had left pregnant teenagers in their wake. But Carter's case would prove to be far more extensive and brutal than anyone could have imagined at first glance. What investigators found next would expose a pattern so disturbing, it defied belief. Carter's abuse wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment or even a series of isolated incidents. Court documents would later reveal that he had sexually assaulted his young victim over 600 times across 10 years, starting when she was just 7 years old. 2 pastors, 2 pregnant teenagers, but the scope of their crimes extended far beyond what anyone initially suspected. The investigation was about to reveal a network of abuse, cover-ups, and institutional failures that would rock multiple communities to their core. Robert L. Carter wasn't just any pastor. He was a bishop, a man who commanded respect and reverence throughout Houston's religious community. For years, families flocked to hear his sermons, seeking spiritual guidance and moral direction. Parents trusted him with their deepest concerns, their family struggles, and most importantly, their children. Carter had built his reputation as a pillar of faith, someone who could be counted on during life's darkest moments. He officiated weddings, baptized babies, and counseled troubled families. His congregation saw him as a direct connection to God, a man whose words carried divine authority and whose presence brought comfort to the faithful. Behind the facade of spiritual leadership lay a monster of unimaginable cruelty. Carter had been systematically abusing a young family member for over a decade, beginning when she was just 7 years old. 600 times. That's how often prosecutors say he violated this innocent child. 600 separate instances of horror that no child should ever endure. How does someone commit such heinous acts over 600 times without detection? The answer lies in the perfect storm of trust, authority, and manipulation. Carter used his position as both a religious leader and family member to create an environment where questioning him was unthinkable. The child was taught that speaking out would bring shame to the family and anger from God himself. The abuse occurred in plain sight, hidden behind closed doors during family gatherings, church events, and private counseling sessions. Carter had groomed not just his victim, but the entire family structure around him. He created a culture of silence where his word was law and his actions were beyond reproach. For 10 long years, carrying the weight of Carter's crimes, while he continued preaching about morality and righteousness from the pulpit every Sunday. When the victim turned 14, the unthinkable happened. She became pregnant with Carter's child. But instead of seeking medical help or acknowledging the gravity of the situation, Carter made a decision that would haunt investigators for years to come. He forced the terrified teenager to give birth in complete secrecy, hidden away in a closet. Imagine the terror of a 14-year-old girl, already traumatized by years of abuse, now facing childbirth alone in the darkness of a confined space. No medical professionals, no pain relief, no support system, just a frightened child bringing another child into the world under the most horrific circumstances possible. The girl endured hours of labor pain in that cramped, dark space while Carter controlled every aspect of the situation. She had no idea what was happening to her body, no understanding of the birthing process, and no one to comfort her through the most vulnerable moment of her young life. The psychological trauma of this experience would scar her forever. What Carter did next reveals the depths of his callousness. After the traumatic birth, he took the newborn baby from his exhausted, bleeding victim and drove straight to a local fire station. Without explanation or documentation, he abandoned the infant, his own biological child, leaving the baby to become a ward of the state. Carter returned home as if nothing had happened, leaving behind a 14-year-old girl who had just endured childbirth alone and lost her baby in the same night. The child she had carried for 9 months was gone, dropped off like an unwanted package, while Carter resumed his role as the respected pastor and family patriarch. But Carter's case pales in comparison to what Pastor Number 2 was doing. While Carter focused his evil on one victim over 10 years, Marvin Scales had turned his entire ministry into a hunting ground, with a level of organization that would shock even seasoned investigators. Because Pastor Number 2 wasn't just abusing one child. He was running what investigators would later describe as a systematic operation involving multiple victims, recorded evidence, and a level of premeditation that transformed his home into a house of horrors.
All right, and after a story that we've been following for over a year now, a local pastor was charged with sexually assaulting an underage family member whom he allegedly impregnated when the victim was just 14 years old. That pastor is due back in court tomorrow for a pre-trial hearing. We first brought you the story last year after the allegations surfaced. Tonight, another one of the alleged victim's relatives who spoke out against the pastor then is speaking to us again. KPRC2's Devin Clark is live downtown Houston with his message ahead of tomorrow's hearing.
Well, he's been back and forth to court over the last year.
In October last year, we told you about Pastor Robert L. Carter, who was charged with continued sexual abuse of a child and sexual assault of a child aged 14 to 17. Carter accused of doing this to a young family member.
How could you show your face in a church where you profess to keep the word or speak the word of God?
This family member, who we are not identifying as to protect the alleged victim's identity, says Carter abused the girl some 600 times, starting when she was just 7 years old, then got her pregnant when she was 14. He says the girl gave birth in a closet. Then Carter took their baby and dropped him off at a fire station.
I mean, it's horrific for one, but it's just been waiting on the judicial system to step in and do what they can do.
This family member says Carter must plead guilty by tomorrow or go to trial, while the Harris County District Attorney's Office says they cannot comment on plea deals before they happen. We have confirmed Carter is due back in court tomorrow.
They have a new judge, a no-nonsense judge, and I think that she's moving the case along as best she can.
Shortly after being charged, Carter posted the $200,000 bond. The alleged victim's family member we've been speaking to says the baby she had, now 6 years old, was adopted by a loving family.
That child is in the best place possible.
As for the alleged victim herself,
she was just tired. She was tired of being afraid.
Her loved one adds she's been working with the prosecutor and working to heal from the trauma Carter caused.
I've never met a woman stronger than that woman there. I've never met a woman who, knowing the facts, can get up every day and not go crazy.
In addition to justice for his loved one, the man you heard from says he hopes this story motivates other potential victims of sexual abuse to come forward. We have a list of resources right now on our website, click2houston.com. And again, Carter due back in court right behind me tomorrow. Reporting outside of the Harris County Criminal Justice Center, Devin Clark, KPRC 2 News.
Horrible. Here at home today, a Houston area pastor made his first official court appearance. Robert Carter is accused of raping a child hundreds of times for more than a decade.
Our Michelle Choi is at the Harris County Criminal Courthouse with the very latest.
We first told you about the disturbing allegations Robert Carter is facing yesterday. Today, the state requested his $200,000 bond remain in place, and the judge agreed. Handcuffed and wearing an orange jumpsuit, Robert Carter was brought into the courtroom around 10 this morning. The 39-year-old suspect is charged with continuous sexual abuse of a child, a first-degree felony, and continuous sexual assault of a child. He's accused of raping a family member more than 600 times over the course of 12 years, according to prosecutors. They say the abuse began when the victim was 7 years old and lasted until she was 19 and took place at Carter's home, churches he worked at, and a grocery store parking lot. They say the victim secretly gave birth to Carter's baby in a closet when she was 16 years old, and Carter dropped the baby off at a fire station in 2018. On that same day, KHOU covered a story about a firefighter finding a baby that was left at a fire station. No word yet if this is the same child. Today in court, we learned the victim's child has since been adopted. The prosecutor in charge of the case tells us DNA testing comes next to determine the paternity. The prosecutor didn't talk to us on camera, but she did confirm Carter is a pastor and the victim's family member. She also gave us a statement saying, "Too often people in positions of power abuse and take advantage of people that trust them. I look forward to allowing the complainant's voice to be heard." We also heard from Carter's attorney.
When he learned of the charges, he turned himself in so he can clear his name. And we'd ask before there is a trial that he be presumed innocent, that people can keep an open mind and hold to him the constitutional presumption of innocence.
Bond conditions were also set for Carter. If he makes bond, in addition to wearing a GPS monitor, he's to have no contact with the victim, and he has to stay away from children, including his own for now. Back to you.
A DNA swab from a baby born at Baylor Scott in White Waxahachie was what authorities needed to stop Marvin Scales.
We got a paternity test, and that test came back, 99.999 to the nth degree to Scales being the presumptive father.
The mother was just 14.
He was arrested for the aggravated sexual assault charge.
Detectives found Scales had 3 other child victims, all connected, prosecutors say, by the church where he worked with kids.
The offender is not just grooming the child into silence. They're grooming the entire family and creating a situation where everyone trusts him.
Arrest affidavits say parents let their kids spend the night at Scales' house. He assaulted them there and on group trips out of town. Detectives found one boy he assaulted because Scales filmed it.
It's possible that there are other victims still out there. Some of the video footage had people that we couldn't identify.
Prosecutors won't say at which church Scales found his victims.
To protect their confidentiality, these are children with something horrific happening to them.
But the DA says the church could have done a background check and found Scales was already a registered sex offender.
It should have heightened them a little bit to at least ask questions.
Does the church bear any responsibility then?
Yeah. He was not on the books as the official youth pastor. He was a volunteer. But still, I would say even volunteers need to be checked.
The 53-year-old pleaded guilty to 4 counts of sex crimes, 1 for each of his victims. A judge sentenced him to prison until 2074.
No chance of parole before that?
Not on those offenses, no.
So from your perspective, 50 years is a life sentence?
It is a life sentence. It was good for our victims because we didn't have to put the victims through the agony of a trial.
She says the kids who trusted their church leader have already been through enough. In Waxahachie, I'm Cole Sullivan.
There.
Izzy, there could be. This is an incredibly disturbing case, one that is hard to even tell you about. We just got our hands on new court documents that say the mom of the 13-year-old girl this man assaulted and impregnated allowed it to happen in exchange for cash. You're looking at Marvin Scales, the man prosecutors now say sexually abused at least 4 children connected to the church where he worked with kids.
Most of them were under 14.
53-year-old Scales was sentenced to 50 years in prison Monday, shedding light on gruesome, disturbing details in at least a dozen court documents.
We got a paternity test, and that test came back, 99.999 to the nth degree.
Police say their investigation into Scales started when he brought a 13-year-old girl he impregnated to the hospital to deliver their baby. Documents now reveal the girl's mother knew what was going on and was allowing it to happen in exchange for Marvin paying for her lifestyle, needs, and wants. The same document says the girl's mom even messaged Scales before the baby was born, complaining she had to take her daughter to the doctor because she was, quote, tired of having the school call her and tell her they thought her daughter was pregnant.
Our understanding is that he was the unofficial youth director.
Scales was a registered sex offender with a rap sheet dating back to the 90s, and still someone allowed him around children at a church, which investigators won't name to protect victim identities. One victim, according to documents, was the 12-year-old daughter of the church pastor, who on 2 church trips to water parks, Scales had sexual intercourse with, while the other kids were sleeping.
I know if I was a pastor of a church, I would not want to have a registered sex offender with people spending the night with that person.
Prosecutors say Scales filmed many of his assaults, including those of a 14-year-old boy. They say detectives have more videos of more child victims they are still working to identify. In Waxahachie, I'm Sydney Person.
Others simply don't perform any meaningful screening at all, trusting that God will guide them to the right candidates. Even more disturbing, Carter had faced previous allegations that were quietly handled internally rather than reported to authorities. Religious institutions often prioritize protecting their image and handling matters within the family of faith rather than involving law enforcement. This culture of internal resolution allows predators to simply move from one congregation to another, carrying their crimes with them. But the most terrifying part isn't what happened, it's what almost didn't. If those hospital staff members hadn't trusted their instincts about Scales, if that family member hadn't found the courage to speak out against Carter, these monsters would still be preying on children today. The nurses and medical staff at Baylor Scott and White Waxahachie Hospital could have easily looked the other way. They could have focused solely on the medical emergency and avoided the complications that come with questioning a patient's guardian. Instead, they chose to trust their professional instincts and moral compass when everything felt wrong about Scales' behavior. These healthcare workers risked potential backlash, legal complications, and professional scrutiny by insisting on a DNA test and contacting authorities. They knew that challenging a respected religious figure could bring unwanted attention to their hospital and themselves personally. Yet they refused to ignore the red flags that were screaming danger. Their decision to act on their suspicions saved countless future victims. By refusing to accept Scales' explanations and demanding answers, they broke open a case that exposed years of systematic abuse. These medical professionals understood that their oath to do no harm extended beyond treating physical ailments. It meant protecting vulnerable patients from ongoing danger, regardless of the personal or professional cost. In Carter's case, one family member made a decision that would forever change their family dynamics and community standing. Speaking out against a respected bishop meant facing ostracism, threats, and accusations of destroying a man of God. Yet this brave individual chose to prioritize the victim's safety over family loyalty and religious politics. The family member knew that coming forward would tear their family apart, create divisions within their church community, and subject them to intense scrutiny and criticism. Religious communities often rally around accused leaders, viewing accusers as instruments of spiritual warfare rather than truth-tellers seeking justice. Despite facing pressure to stay silent and handle the matter privately within the family, this courageous person contacted authorities and spoke publicly about Carter's crimes. They understood that protecting one child's future was more important than preserving family reputation or church unity. Their willingness to break the code of silence gave the victim permission to finally speak her truth after years of suffering alone. The most extraordinary heroes in both cases are the survivors themselves, children who found the strength to speak truth to power despite years of manipulation, threats, and psychological conditioning. Carter's victim endured a decade of abuse, forced childbirth, and the trauma of having her baby taken away. Yet she still found the courage to cooperate with prosecutors and share her story. In Scales' case, the 14-year-old mother who gave birth at the hospital became the catalyst for justice. Despite being a child herself, dealing with new motherhood and the trauma of abuse, she worked with investigators to expose the man who had violated her trust and innocence. Her bravery opened the door for other victims to come forward. Each additional victim who spoke out against Scales demonstrated incredible courage. These children had been conditioned to believe they were complicit in their own abuse, that speaking out would destroy their family's faith, and that no one would believe them over a respected pastor. Yet one by one, they found their voices and shared their experiences with investigators. Their testimonies weren't just legal evidence. They were acts of rebellion against the system that had failed to protect them. These young survivors chose healing over silence, justice over shame. The courage of these heroes is creating waves of protection that extend far beyond their individual cases. Hospital staff nationwide are now more vigilant about suspicious guardians and unusual family dynamics. Religious communities are implementing stricter background checks and oversight policies. Parents are having difficult but necessary conversations with their children about inappropriate behavior from authority figures. Most importantly, other survivors are finding their voices. Every time someone speaks out against abuse in religious settings, it gives permission for others to break their silence. The bravery of Carter's and Scales' victims is inspiring a movement of accountability that's protecting children across the country right now. Even with overwhelming evidence against him, Robert Carter continues to plead not guilty to all charges. His attorney publicly stated their hope that people will presume him innocent, despite testimony about 600 separate assaults, DNA evidence linking him to his victim's child, and corroborating witness statements from family members. Carter's refusal to accept responsibility adds another layer of trauma for his victim, who must now face the prospect of testifying in court about the most horrific experiences of her life. His trial is scheduled for February 2025, where a jury will decide whether this former bishop will finally face consequences for a decade of systematic abuse. Marvin Scales received 50 years in prison without the possibility of parole, a sentence that ensures he will die behind bars. While many see this as justice served, others question whether any punishment can truly match the magnitude of his crimes against multiple children over years of systematic abuse. The district attorney called it an unusually heinous case of child sexual abuse, acknowledging that Scales' calculated approach and use of recording equipment demonstrated a level of premeditation that shocked even experienced prosecutors. His status as a registered sex offender who was still hired by a church adds another disturbing dimension to his case that raises questions about institutional accountability. The baby that Carter forced his 14-year-old victim to deliver in a closet has found something his biological father never gave him: love and safety. Now 6 years old, the child was adopted by a caring family who has provided him with the nurturing environment every child deserves. According to the victim's family member, that child is in the best place possible. The adoptive family has no connection to Carter or the traumatic circumstances of the boy's birth. He's growing up surrounded by genuine love, completely unaware of the horrific conditions that brought him into this world, protected from the darkness of his origins. The revelations about Carter and Scales didn't just destroy two men, they shattered entire faith communities that had trusted these predators with their most precious possessions, their children. Congregations that once gathered in unity now find themselves divided between those who believe the victims and those who still defend their fallen leaders. Many church members are grappling with profound questions about their own judgment and spiritual discernment. How could they have been so wrong about men they considered godly? Parents are tormented by guilt, wondering if they missed warning signs or inadvertently put their children in danger by trusting these pastors. Some congregations have split entirely, with families leaving to find new spiritual homes where they can begin healing. Others are implementing new safety protocols and accountability measures, determined to prevent future tragedies. The ripple effects extend beyond the immediate victims to include hundreds of church members who must now rebuild their faith and trust from the ground up. What investigators are still uncovering raises disturbing questions about the true scope of these crimes. How many other victims remain silent? Were there additional perpetrators within these religious organizations who helped cover up the abuse or participated in it? The recorded evidence from Scales' home is still being analyzed, potentially revealing more victims or accomplices. Most troubling is the question of institutional knowledge. Did church leadership know about previous allegations and choose to ignore them? Investigators are examining whether there was a systematic cover-up that allowed these predators to continue operating. The full truth may be even more horrifying than what's already been revealed. Predators like Carter and Scales rely on parents missing crucial red flags that could save children's lives. Watch for adults who seek excessive one-on-one time with your child, especially in private settings like counseling sessions or special mentorship opportunities. Be suspicious of anyone who gives your child special privileges, gifts, or treats them as uniquely special compared to other children. Pay attention to behavioral changes in your child after spending time with specific adults. Sudden fear of certain people, reluctance to attend previously enjoyed activities, or unexplained knowledge about adult topics should trigger immediate concern. Children who become withdrawn, exhibit age-inappropriate sexual behavior, or show regression in development may be signaling distress. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong about an adult's interaction with your child. Predators often test boundaries gradually, starting with seemingly innocent physical contact or private conversations. They may also try to isolate your family by creating special relationships that make you feel chosen or blessed. Remember, legitimate mentors and spiritual leaders welcome transparency and parental involvement rather than seeking secretive access to children. Having age-appropriate conversations about body safety and inappropriate behavior is crucial for protecting your children. Start by teaching them that their body belongs to them and that no adult should ask them to keep physical contact secret. Explain that trusted adults like teachers, pastors, or family friends should never ask them to touch private areas or show them inappropriate images. Create an environment where your child feels safe, reporting uncomfortable situations without fear of getting in trouble. Use simple language like, if someone makes you feel scared, confused, or asks you to keep secrets about touching, you should tell me right away. Emphasize that they will never be in trouble for telling you about adult behavior that makes them uncomfortable. Practice scenarios where your child can say no to adults and seek help. Teach them that real emergencies don't require keeping secrets from parents. Most importantly, believe your child when they report concerning behavior. Children rarely lie about abuse, and your immediate supportive response can prevent ongoing trauma while encouraging them to continue communicating with you about difficult situations. Take immediate action to protect your children, starting today. Research any organization where your child spends unsupervised time, demanding to see their background check policies and safety protocols. Never allow your child to have overnight stays or private meetings with adults outside your immediate family without your presence. Establish regular check-ins with your children about their interactions with authority figures. Create code words they can use to signal discomfort in situations where they can't speak freely. Most importantly, trust your parental instincts over social pressure to respect authority figures who make you uncomfortable. Your voice can save a child's life. Subscribe to stay informed about protecting the innocent. Share this story to warn other parents and comment below with your thoughts. Together, we can create a world where predators can't hide behind positions of trust.